Take myself off mute. Good evening, everybody. We are back with another Finn's Forecast show. Tonight, we are going to be talking about the Dolphins' offense, what the offense is going to be looking like moving forward. It's going to be an exciting show. I know we all want some changes, so we're going to be talking about that. We're also going to be talking about the Super Bowl a little bit because it warrants being talked about. Who's in, who's out in the for the Dolphins offense, who we want to come back, who we want to, leave. Robert Jones.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. So we're gonna get into that right after this. Good evening, everybody. My camera is very fuzzy right now. I don't know why.
Keith disappeared.
I will try to get that fixed for everybody. But for the time being, good evening, everybody. We are back with another Finn's Forecast show. We're going to be going into the offseason tonight. What we want the Dolphins team to look like moving forward, especially on the offensive side of the ball. We'll do defense next week. So tonight it's just offense. Lots to talk about. Josh, how you feeling tonight, man?
Well, I'm good. Man, I feel great. On the mend finally. Thank you, everything holy, and celebrated my birthday on Sunday. My wife surprised me with a bunch of stuff, and it was a really, really fun day. It's been a while since we've been able to get out and kind of do our own thing because we've both been fighting the illness. So really great, man. Really great. I'm super excited about today's show. I'm really excited to go over the offensive, who we're keeping, who we're letting go, because I think there's going to be some spicy takes, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I think there probably is. Happy belated birthday, Josh.
Thank you, sir.
Anthony, how you doing tonight, man?
Yeah, you guys are 5 days apart. How about that? That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I'm doing all right, man. I'm doing good, just taking it one day at a time. Dolphins offseason has been here for a while now, it feels like. Josh mentioned before we got on, like it's felt like forever since we did a show, and it does. I don't know why. Maybe because there isn't the games to pay attention to in between shows, so now it just feels like an eternity since I've talked to you guys.
Yeah.
I'm pumped, man. I'm pumped. The same as Josh. I want to talk about all these position groups on the offense. Who are we going to get rid of? Who are we going to trade? And who are we going to add, right? Like, I can't wait. Yeah.
Nice. This is gonna be a fun show, actually. Just doing projections moving forward. So I've been looking forward to this all week. Taylor, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing fantastic.
Actually, first and foremost, let me cut in. Love the sweatshirt.
Yes.
Love the hoodie.
Yes, absolutely.
I appreciate it, guys. NFLshop.com, apparently. I got this as a Christmas gift. So, this is probably the best Dolphin sweatshirt I've had in years. But, yeah, man, I'm doing fantastic. Keith, I know why your camera was blurry. It's because our team outlook, particularly on the offensive side of the ball, is a bit blurry. And also, Josh, I just got to say, I got to just send my condolences to you. I'm so sorry that you did not get the job for the special teams coordinator.
Yeah, I gave it a good effort. I gave it a good shot. They just don't want they don't want a good coach. They just want mediocrity.
Yeah. They didn't know what they could have had.
That was a heartbreaking loss right there. It really was. So first and foremost, guys, let's just talk about the playoffs here. We have a Super Bowl matchup between the Eagles and the Chiefs. It's a rematch from 2 years ago. We would be remiss if we didn't at least mention it at the beginning of the show. So I know this is a Dolphins show, and Dolphins aren't in the Super Bowl, but we should at least talk about the Super Bowl a little bit here. So what are our thoughts on this? Do you have any predictions? Do you have any hopes? Anthony, I know you're not cheering for the Chiefs in this one.
Listen. So I went to Monster Jam last weekend, right? And it's here in the Prudential Center down in Newark, New Jersey. And it was freaking awesome. So then when I got home and I watched the games and it's like Eagles Chiefs, I immediately messaged my brother who I went with and I was like, so is there another Monster Jam coming on like February, whatever day the Super Bowl is? Because I have no interest in this game. I don't care. I have zero skin in this Eagles Chiefs game. I hate seeing the same teams in the Super Bowl in like within close proximity of each other. So the fact that we had the same game 2 years ago, I am really considering not even watching it. Like I have no interest in it.
And the halftime show is not even that good.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
They should do a Monster Jam at halftime.
I
Then
should.
everybody would tune in.
I know Taylor took exception to that halftime show comment.
Come on, man. Kendrick Lamar's pretty good.
No, I'm a country guy through and through. Sorry.
Well, I was
Man.
a
You're off the
fan of
show.
I was a fan of the Dr. Dre halftime show. That was like peak for me. Dr. Dre and Eminem. That's my show.
Yep.
That's my childhood right there.
Yep.
So all right. So Anthony, you're not too psyched about the game. Taylor, how you feeling about it?
I'm going to keep this short and sweet. I'm not excited about it either. I am rooting for the Meteor right now. So we'll see how that works out. But yeah, man, I'm more excited for the halftime show, and that's where I'm at as an NFL fan, to where I despise both of these teams. Just not really interested in the game at all. Might check it out, might not. I don't know.
Josh, what are your thoughts on it, man?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's just clean sweep for a meh Super Bowl, right? I don't like to subscribe to the this is the NFL's a business, and all of that stuff about the Chiefs and how the refs want them to be in the Super Bowl and all this other stuff because of Patrick Mahomes and Taylor Swift and all that. I tend not to buy into it, but even watching the Bills game against the Chiefs, like it's kind of hard not to.
It's hard, dude. I'm the same way. Watching that game was like, oh, you got to be kidding me with these calls.
Yeah, I mean, it's bad, man. It's really bad, and I'm sorry, I got something stuck in my throat. But so is it a foregone conclusion that Kansas City's going to win? Probably. I'm rooting. I mean, I don't really care about either team, but I'm rooting for the Eagles because I'd love to see Saquon kind of just nail the Giants' coffin shut completely. For I keep seeing all of these these memes from Hard Knocks, where Jim Mora's I think it's Jim Mora's in the office with the Giants brass, and they're like, "Oh man, I don't know, we can't trade. I'm gonna lose sleep over Saquon going and doing it." And sure as crap, he's like, breaking every record known to man, and like it's
He's
hilarious.
Like, Saquon's the biggest merch seller we have. Like, can we retain?
He can't
him?
go to the Eagles. I'm going to lose sleep over. Well, there you go.
They're talking about him going to the Bears, and oh man, that's a hard clip to watch if you're a Giants fan right now.
Yeah. So I'm rooting for them just because it's funny. But honestly, I let's be honest. We know the Chiefs are going to win. I mean, look, I'm not trying to wear my tinfoil hat here, but I have no reason to believe that they're going to lose, unless somehow the Eagles are up by 30. Then maybe they'll win by 2.
That's what Bill Burr said too.
Yeah, that's where I got it from.
All right. Well, I'm actually going to buck the trend here. I'm super intrigued by the Super Bowl.
I like it.
I'm the Phillies. I'm the Philly Fins fan, obviously. So I'm from the Philadelphia area. Bunch of my best friends are Eagles fans. So they're going to be rooting hard for the Eagles. I listen to Philadelphia sports talk radio almost exclusively in my car.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're super psyched for this. And I'm cheering definitively against the Eagles because I wash my car with Eagles fans' tears. So
we are a house divided, it seems like.
Yeah.
I will say this though. I will say this. The videos of the Eagles fans, like, after the Washington game, like messing with these average Joe fan, like it's so trashy. Like I gotta be honest with you. I know you're you're a Phillies fan kind of thing. Yeah. I know they're not your team, but you live in that area. But my God, are they trashy fans?
Yeah,
bro.
I agree. And they give Philadelphia sports fans a bad name. Mm-hmm. I'm also a Phillies fan, a Sixers fan, Flyers fan. Dolphins.
You guys want Jimmy Butler back? I'm a
I
Heat
would
fan.
take-
I'm a
I
Heat
would
fan.
take Jimmy Butler. I just don't know. I don't know. I think the Sixers are a little too far gone right now.
Sorry. Anyways,
Funny
back to-
story. My good friend's an Eagles fan. Is the last time they won a Super Bowl, I went to the parade with him because nobody else. Like, we're in
Oh,
Giants
yeah?
territory. Nobody else wanted to go with them. So I went to the Eagles parade with him, and oh my god, dude, it did not give you a good insight into Philly. Let me tell you. Let me just leave it at that. Okay.
It's bad.
Yeah.
It's bad, man.
Yeah. It's, and I'm actually going to be in Philly this weekend. I'm hanging out with my best friend whose birthday it is on Saturday, and it's going to be wild down there. I was in Philadelphia when the Phillies won the World Series in 08. I know we're getting off track a little bit here, but I was in Philadelphia when the Phillies won the World Series in 08. It was pandemonium down there. I was not down in the city when the Eagles won in 2017. They win again this year. It's going to be just absolutely insane. A college kid from Temple was actually climbing with a pole and fell, and he actually died. So
Jeez.
thoughts and prayers to him and his family. But like, it's just crazy down there. So I do have some skin in this game, I would say.
That's good.
No Jason Kelsey in the mummer outfit. I mean, what's there to see then? You know,
I mean,
like,
right. I think
course.
yeah.
Of course.
I don't know.
So are there any other off-season storylines you guys want to talk about? I know Anthony Weaver is getting interviewed by the Saints.
yeah, but if
he
they
has
haven't
been
hired him
interviewed
yet,
by
he's
the Saints.
safe. I mean,
Yeah, I think he's safe.
I'm hoping he is, and hopefully by next week when we do our defensive show, we'll have a little more clarity on Anthony Weaver's future.
Mhm. Does anyone have the list of coaching hires? I know like Pete Carroll got
yeah,
hired.
I'll add in. I think the Pete Carroll move to the Raiders is brilliant.
I
think,
love
I love it too.
yeah,
I love it.
mean, talk about a guy who could turn a team like that around quickly.
Mhm.
I know, like,
Absolutely.
everybody wants to keep pointing to his age, but like what Seattle did to him was sketchy.
Yeah.
And now
agreed.
he lands with the Raiders. I
Yeah.
think that's my favorite move of the offseason.
And he's got some good pieces. I mean, yes, they
Yeah.
need a quarterback, but I mean, they got a stud tight end. They have a really decent defense with Christian Wilkins coming back.
He'll likely grab Bevel from us to make it Dolphins related.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Bevel was his offensive coordinator when he was
they
in
brought
Seattle.
him in. They brought him in for an interview. Yeah.
And I'll tell you this
just
about
real quick.
Yeah,
The head coaching hires, Dallas Cowboys hired Brian Schottenheimer.
Oh, that's the other one. Yeah. Typical
And
Cowboys.
we also
move.
had the Raiders hiring Pete Carroll. And as you were saying, Keith, the Saints are still looking for their head
They're the
coach.
last one, right?
Yeah.
So they're hiring one of the guys that's in the Super Bowl then.
I'm thinking they're going to hire Kellen Moore. I think that's my.
You think so?
Yeah, that's my
a weird
thought.
hire.
That's a bad move. But
oh,
hey, go for it.
I'm not. I'm not a huge fan of it either. And I was saying this on the Dolphins subreddit. The Saints to me are like one of the least palatable coaching options.
I
Because
gotta say,
they're just in salary cap hell perpetually.
well, that's true.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big Mike McCarthy fan, but he is very clearly better than these coordinators that are playing in this Super Bowl. Like, I would bring him in.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, but you're kind of screwed with when Mike Tannenbaum really left, like dropped a bomb and left.
as
Yeah.
he do.
And the last job I didn't mention was Liam Cohen being hired as the head coach of
That's
the
a
Jacksonville
weird
Jaguars. And
Yeah.
what was a crazy.
Did
That
you
one-
see his like the video? It's like awkward.
It
Of all-
confuses me, that move, so much. I don't.
He's
yeah.
like walking around the facilities, looking at his office, and he's like, "Wow, I mean, I guess this is something." And it's like, bro, like, what are you doing?
You know
He
what kills me
also-
is I think that Shad Khan is a good owner, like in terms of just like he really wants to win, but these hires he makes is so confusing.
Yeah. And that whole thing was a little bit messy too, because apparently he told Baker Mayfield he was staying in Tampa Bay, and then he turns around and gets hired by Jacksonville. So
I saw that. I gotta say, Keith, I don't care, man. Unless
Eh.
you sign on the dotted line, nothing is foolproof, right? I mean, shit.
Yeah.
Even when you do sign on the dotted line, Bill Belichick signed on the dotted line for the Jets and then gave his resignation on a freaking napkin. So, like, I mean,
yeah.
that's just the way the world works. Like, if you're a professional football player and you don't know that, like, I'm sorry, dude, but you're a little naive.
Mhm.
Yeah. And, hey, fair enough. Fair enough. All right. So off season's out of the way. Unless you guys have anything else you want to talk about.
Nope, it was good.
All
Good
right.
news segment. There we go.
New segment. Moving on to the Dolphins offense. Now, I'm going to do this position by position. Who we want to stay, who we want to go. So I'm just going to take this, and I'm going to start the quarterback. So, now let's also try to be realistic about this, guys. I don't think Tua is going anywhere.
No.
I think him, at the very least, him, Chris Greer, and Mike McDaniel are all kind of married at this point, and it's till death do them part. So let's go into this with the understanding, if you guys are amenable to this, let's go into this with the understanding that Tua is going to be our starting quarterback in 2025, opening day. How do we want the quarterback room to shake out past Tua? Taylor, I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, I would say we have Tyler Huntley, Skylar Thompson. Thankfully,
Yep.
Skylar Thompson is now a Pittsburgh Steeler,
Mhm.
so we don't have to worry about that. And we don't have to worry about the entire offseason. So +1 to all of us here and all Dolphin fans everywhere. I would say bring Huntley back as a QB3.
Mm-mm.
And honestly, for that QB2 job, I would want to find more of a physical skill set for a quarterback. That way, the QB2 and QB3 are there more so they can run a simplified version of the offense that when pressed, and absolutely they have to, they can make a play or two. That way, we're also not trying to find a backup who is, as much as I like Tua, I'm a huge fan of Tua and his accuracy and all that. And I say that because, well, he is physically limited in terms of arm strength.
Mhm.
I'd much rather find a backup who isn't exactly like that. So that's what I would do with the QB position.
Do you have any suggestions for who you'd like?
Not at this time.
And I do
Okay.
have the full list. I mean, I have a list of every single upcoming free agent,
Yeah.
and it's sorted by position. So if you guys just want me to rattle off some names so we can talk about them,
Nah,
I'm
yeah,
happy
I got
to.
some. I got some.
Okay, so I won't
Yeah.
say a thing. I won't say anything.
I've
I
got a
would
couple of,
say, off the top of my head, the first name I thought of was Jameis Winston.
okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think Jameis Winston's a guy that you can certainly win with. And with Jameis Winston, you live by the sword, you die by the sword, right?
Yeah.
He's gonna Jameis out sometimes.
No, 5 touchdowns or 5 interceptions. That's all
Yeah.
you're getting.
And you don't know which one you're gonna get.
Yep.
But I don't hate that move. But I'm actually going to differ with Taylor a little bit here. I want the Dolphins to bring in a guy who kind of matches to his skill set, because I think this offense is designed around
I know who
a
you're
guy
taking.
who does what Tua does.
I know who you're going after. Who do you? What's your name?
What's my name?
Yeah. Well, I
I-
know your name, but like, what's your player's name?
That's Keith.
Um,
Do you not know Keith?
I don't. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, we just met tonight. My name is actually a veteran who has been through all the battles, has all the
Mhm.
battle scars. I want Andy Dalton.
Oh, that's my name. Nice.
Is it?
Good pick. That's a really good pick.
I want Andy
Yeah.
Dalton. That's who I want the Dolphins to bring in as their QB2. I think he's going to be, for one thing, he's going to be a good mentor to Tua. And I know Tua doesn't necessarily need a mentor because he's been in the league a while, but he'll be a good mentor behind Tua. He's a consummate professional. And he goes in there and he can do some things. Whereas the Dolphins' backup quarterbacks this year could not. Anthony, I'm going to throw this to you. Who do you have any names in mind? Who do you see the Dolphins bringing in?
I do want to talk about the Tua thing first for a second, just because I know there's going to be people who tune into this episode and with the exact mindset of, okay, I hope these guys say get rid of Tua. I get it, guys. This guy is not on the field very often. He has only played one full season, and it's an extremely frustrating situation to deal with. But if you look at this list of free agents, like we have looked at this list of free agents, it is hot garbage. You are about to hear a bunch of names of players who we're hoping to be backups, and I don't even feel good about it. I feel dirty saying these names. So, there are no options to replace Tua. I'm sorry if that's what you need to hear. There isn't a good alternative. There isn't a good alternative in this draft. There isn't a good alternative in free agency, and teams don't trade away top-tier quarterbacks. That's not a reality that we live in, just some fantasy that you have in your mind. So I want to get past that for a second. And I will say I am a guy who likes to draft a quarterback every single year. I just agree with that setup. I think that it's worked out really well for the teams who have done it, and the fact that they have had quarterbacks to trade away because of it. So I don't know. I haven't done my deep dive into the draft yet, but I will say that I would like to see a guy 4th round or later, because I think the top 3 rounds you should build up your roster, and then 4 through 7, throw a dart, baby. Let's throw a dart. So if there's a guy in this draft who is the same build as Tua, has pinpoint accuracy, but has a noodle arm, let's get it, baby. Right? Like, you don't need the backup to throw it deep downfield. You need your backup just to be salvageable, to
game manage.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to the free agent guys that I'm looking at, I had Andy Dalton. I took him off my list, and my eye went to Cooper Rush down in Dallas.
Wow.
He did some really good things when Dak was out 2 years ago. I think he can at least make you not cry yourself to sleep at night after the game. And I had a bunch of other guys on my list too, but I don't want to like spit through it in case you guys have them too. But I also agree with Taylor. I would be okay with bringing Tyler Huntley back. I think I've come to grips with the reality that it's likely going to be Huntley, as much as I really don't like that fit. But I do think that Cooper Rush has just enough there to be a solid backup. I don't want him starting. If Tua is out for like half the season, we're screwed anyway. So like if he misses his regular 4 games, then I would like to have Cooper Rush there.
Well, I think your first point, Anthony, where you say that Tua is going to be back, whether you want it or not, that's actually important to point out first and foremost, because you're absolutely right. There aren't any guys in the free agent market that are going to be better than Tua, more palatable than Tua. And, you know, there's nobody in the draft, especially where the Dolphins are drafting, that we want to see play over Tua, that we want to see in the Dolphins uniform over Tua. So that's important to point out. Whether we want Tua back or not, he's back. Now, as far as your other point, I don't know about Cooper Rush, and I don't think the Dolphins are going to be satisfied going into this season with Tyler Huntley as the quarterback too. I think they've learned their lesson from last year. I think they saw Tyler Huntley, especially like in games like that Jets game. He couldn't elevate the Dolphins offense. And we need a guy who's going to, if not elevate the Dolphins offense, at least make them look competent.
I wish I could believe you, but these guys thought Skylar Thompson was good. So
yeah,
and
that, that is a point I'm about to make once it gets passed over to me.
I'm about to pass it over to you, Josh. I'm just going to say one more thing. I think the Dolphins brass, Chris Greer, Mike McDaniel, and company, I think they know that their feet are to the fire here. Their seats are getting warm, and they need to learn from their past mistakes. And if you don't learn from your past mistakes, you don't deserve to have a job. So this season, I think they learned the hard way that you need to have a viable backup, especially for a quarterback who's as injury prone as Tua is.
Yeah.
So, Josh, I'm going to throw it to you.
Yeah, first and foremost through the draft, I think there's one name I've mentioned it on plenty of shows. Spoiler alert, go check some of our past shows if you're interested. But and there was a report that came out that the specific quarterback had a conversation with the Dolphins brass as in regards to being the backup should he be drafted, and that's Jalen Milrose from Alabama. Now I'm not the biggest fan of his. I think, he's got a decent arm, but there are a lot of things to be concerned, but he would be someone, if he's available in the 3rd or 4th, why not take a flyer on him? Right. I mean, not saying that he will be, but he's one of those kind of, let's take a flyer and see if it sticks. Right.
Yeah.
It does feel like a draft where you get like 1 or 2 guys in the first round and everybody else is way later.
Yeah. I agree. Unless somebody blows up at the combine, like the second quarterback the Patriots got out of Tennessee.
Drake May.
Nope. The other guy.
Joe Milton.
Joe Milton. Right?
No,
not Joe Milton.
He's their current backup.
Yeah. Somebody that I loved in the draft. Right. So I think from a veteran standpoint, I would really, I mean, honestly, I know this is not going to be a popular name, but someone like Justin Fields, I think, would be a perfect backup for this team. He's got the legs. When he has time and in the right offense, you see that he has the tools to be accurate. He has the ability to scramble. You know, again, everything comes to excuse me. Sorry, fellas. What are the Miami Dolphins going to do with the offensive line? Right now, the one thing we can say, and we can put our hat in, our name in the hat, if you will, is that this Miami Dolphins team, every single offseason for the last 3 years, has identified a weakness and has addressed it and overkilled it. I mean, like slaughtered it. Right. I mean, you think the first year of the regime, it was wide receiver, running back. We signed every wide receiver we could, and we signed every running back we could. And then we whittled it down to our starting unit. Last year it was cornerbacks and safeties and linebackers. We signed a crap ton of them, and then we whittled it down. So I think hopefully with all the comments we've heard, Chris Greer has done enough to make me feel confident they're going to address it. But somebody like Justin Fields, even somebody like Daniel Jones, right? Or Mac Jones. I mean, not popular names by any stretch, but to your guys' point, I mean, we're talking about the bottom of the barrel here in free agency.
Yeah.
So,
I am curious, Josh. I mean, I think, I love Fields, and the only reason I didn't make him mine is because I felt like he may go after a starting gig.
Yeah.
And want to put himself in a position to do that, maybe with Pittsburgh. So I'd just love to get your kind of remarks on that.
Yeah, I think Pittsburgh's in an interesting position. And I think, with Russell Wilson, I think I don't know what his status is, right, for Pittsburgh, but I can't remember if he's got, he's okay. I wasn't sure if he had one more year left, but, I don't know if Justin Fields, I know he might want to be a starter. And there are some probably amongst the fans that believe he has the potential to be a starter. I just don't know if the regime that is the Pittsburgh Steelers can hang their hat on a starting quarterback that is Justin Fields. You know what I mean? So, I'm not saying they won't. It would be very shocking if, of all the organizations, if Pittsburgh is the one that says, you know what? Yeah, Justin Fields, you're our starter. You're good. You know what I mean?
Well, one thing we do know for sure is that Tua is the only quarterback on our roster right now, so we're going to sign somebody.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And two things real quick. To be clear, when I was talking about Tyler Huntley, I was talking about QB3. I do not want him as QB2. I don't think he showed enough to be the clear-cut QB2. But also, what's also important about what you guys have been talking about, get a quarterback who fits alongside what Tua's skill set is, or get somebody who could just manage a game, or maybe draft somebody late. What's so important about that is this is just us talking about like what we would like to see. We don't really know what McDaniel and Greer are planning for that backup quarterback spot. We can think like, hey, they might want to go more in line, like an Andy Dalton kind of guy, or like we were suggesting here, they could go outside the box and go more like a physical tool set. If Milroe does fall down to the third or fourth round, I don't foresee that happening, but still those kind of physical tool set kind of quarterbacks. So that's an interesting part of this exercise for us to really look at it from how we would really like to see it. But also for the Dolphins, I don't think it's a slam dunk as some fans think that we're going to get some guy who could just run the scheme like Tua, who's a similar player.
It's wide open.
There are very few guys in the NFL who can do what Tua does is the problem. Like Anthony was saying, bringing a guy with pinpoint accuracy. Guys with pinpoint accuracy, generally speaking, are already on NFL rosters.
Well, that's why I said noodle arm, right? They don't draft a noodle arm, so they fall.
Yeah. Maybe we can bring Chad Pennington out of retirement.
There you go. I was thinking of Russ, actually. Somebody who just has that thing that makes them fall. Like Russ was too short to play quarterback, right? So he falls to the third round.
Yeah.
Just find that guy who's really good but has that thing that's going to drop him.
Yeah. I know. So I know we want. I think we're all in agreement that we want a better QB2, and I think, whether it's Andy Dalton or Russell Wilson or Daniel Jones or Marcus Mariota, I think there are better options out there for the Dolphins. And going into the season with Tyler Huntley as your QB2 is just a bad move all around. And I think the Dolphins brass will realize that, and they'll move on and bring in somebody who can at least tread water for the Dolphins should Tua go down.
Hey, that's my very good friend in the chat, Mr. Brian Wilson. He's an obnoxiously annoying but wonderful person that's a Pats fan. So
Nice.
welcome to the show. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Brian Wilson, congratulations to Drake May for making the Pro Bowl after
He's
like
he's
three guys
also a
turned it
UNC
down.
guy, so that's big.
After the top three guys, turn it down. Drake May made it. So congrats to Drake May.
Our
Jonnu
nerves don't
Smith
get
made the Pro Bowl too, by the way.
Yeah,
as
our
an
nerves
old-
don't get wrecked because we almost have exclusively other teams' fans coming in here to say hi to us.
No, exactly. Yeah.
All right, so let's move on here. We kind of lingered on backup quarterback for longer than we probably should have.
It's important, man. It's important.
It's
Um,
important, man.
it is
You know,
important.
we're going to be one of the few teams that spends, in my opinion, close anywhere between $5 and $8 million on a backup quarterback, and that's where we should be living.
Yeah. So we're going to move on to running back here, guys, and this should be a fairly short conversation because we're going to bring Devon Achane back, obviously Jalen Wright. Do we want Raheem Mostert back? Who do we want to bring in? Josh, I'll start with you on this one.
No, I think Mostert, I think he's got 1 year left. That's a team option, if I'm not mistaken. He needs to go, right? I mean, not saying he can't be a productive back still. I mean, and I'm using, air quotes, a productive back. I think this year we saw age catch up to him, right? And I think this is one of those things where he can go to a team, be the number 3 back. God forbid somebody gets injured. He comes in, kind of keeps the ship afloat kind of thing. But I don't think he's got the wear and tear where he can be a reliable running back, right? And Jeff Wilson, for all intents and purposes, like I know some of y'all are fans. I haven't been. He's a free agent. See you later. Bye. Yeah. I think we can. I think we can make some upgrades. I think the draft is where, me personally, I think we can. I have a man crush in this draft who I won't spoil it until later, but somebody that I'm a big fan of that's in the Senior Bowl that had a killer year out of nowhere. That kind of reminds me of a poor man's Christian McCaffrey, if you will. So
say his name, man. That's what we're here for.
Scatterbo. I think he's underrated. I think he can do a little bit of everything, and I think what he brings to the wide receiver, to the running back room, right? I mean, Arizona State running back, 1,711 yards rushing, 21 touchdowns, 45 receptions, over 600 yards receiving. He's a 3-down type back. He can block. I mean, he's kind of that do it everything, and he should be available, in my opinion, in rounds 4, 5, 6, those kind of things. So someone we can certainly, attack it and try to get. If we're looking at the who's available, that's where it gets a little tricky for me, right? Because you have names like Aaron Jones, Najee Harris, AJ Dillon, Nick Chubb, Javonte Williams. Like those are all players that a lot of those should probably be re-signed, in my opinion, to their current teams. So I don't really know if there's maybe like an Alexander Madison might be someone we could get for like a third round back. But I imagine that barring any kind of crazy trade or crazy signing, we go into this next year with Achane and Jalen Wright. I'm not thrilled about it because I do think this team requires a big, and I'm going to use his name very loosely, but a Derrick Henry type back, big, physical, can get you those 1 yards, those 2 yard gains on third and short that we lack.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, one thing to note about this draft is that its deepest position is probably running back.
One of them,
so
at least.
If we're looking for a running back in rounds 3, 4, 5, we can get a good one there. Now, I'm going to throw this to you, Taylor. What are your thoughts on running back? Do you have any names in mind?
So I'm of two minds on this one, and this is more of you talked about Mostert having a team option. This is kind of the options here. If Mostert stays, Mostert goes. If Mostert stays, we do have a running back 2-3 kind of option, to where his running back's not as much of a need, I would say. So then, how high we draft a running back. I would not recommend signing a free agent. The year for that was last year between Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
For this draft class, Keith, you said it. This is one of the deeper positions in the draft. I would say alongside the offensive line and the defensive line, and specifically the interior defensive line. And I would really, I'm more of the mindset too that you draft running back and wide receiver every year, no matter what. So you keep Mostert. I say you draft somebody late, or maybe pick up an undrafted free agent running back. Mostert goes. I am up for anything at running back. You guys know we talked about it a few weeks ago, talking about the grades. I wasn't as high on Jalen Wright with his opportunities as you three, and I understand that he was a rookie. He will improve. But with this roster, you do need somebody that could be a bell cow back, I believe. And we saw what happened when Sanford got somebody like Christian McCaffrey. Mm-hmm. The whole offense just unlocked. And I think, now granted, Christian McCaffreys don't grow on trees, but if you can get somebody who can be the guy in that offense, and Achane is more of a, I want him to get touches, not necessarily a running back kind of guy. Mm-hmm. So my thing would be draft somebody. I'm a big fan of Scadabo as well, Josh. So I would say really somebody like that. I'm a big fan, too, of the two Ohio State running backs, Henderson and
– oh, yeah. Yep.
Who's the other guy? I forget off the top of my head. But Henderson and the other back who was competing for RB1 with Genty. But I don't think we're going to be able to get Genty.
Oh, so, God. Could you imagine Genty on this team, though? Oh.
Yeah,
Quinshon Judkins.
We'd have to take him in the first round.
I know.
Yeah.
Don't pee in my Cheerios.
So Quinshon Judkins, Henderson, those kind of guys. So that's what I would do at the position.
I love this.
You know what? We've seen those commercials, man. Those guys are just much better off on the couch.
I mean, with some of our fourth and fifth string wide receivers, though, I'd take Megatron.
I'd take Megatron, not the other guys. So,
yeah. All right, so Anthony, I'm going to throw it to you. I know you got a few names on your list, so lay them on us, man.
Yeah, like I said, everybody knows at this point. If you watch, I'm not a college football watcher, so I have to do my research after the season, and I haven't started that yet. So, while I agree with the sentiment of taking a running back in the draft, we seem to do that every year anyway, so I have no doubts. Just don't do it in the first 3 rounds, fellas. We got needs. Needs, and running back ain't a big one, right? So I agree with a little bit with Taylor. Jalen Wright didn't give us everything we wanted to see and more, not like Devon did in his rookie season, but I think we're okay there. And if we have to bring Mostert back, we have to bring Mostert back. It's okay. It'll be okay. Yeah. Other names I thought I would like to see, but I have a feeling they're going to re-sign just because they were significant contributors to the teams this year, was Kareem Hunt over in Kansas City. He's a free agent. And then Cam Akers up in Minnesota. He's a free agent this year as well. These guys played good ball this year. Really hard runners. And, the thing I like about them is that they hit the opposing defense hard, but they're also quick. They're not slow. So I know that Josh has been preaching that we need a guy who can take a hit. And I think somebody like these two, if we can't get anybody in the draft, right? Yeah. So if we can't get anybody in the draft that can do that, or if Jalen Wright doesn't step up like we expect him to, I mean, I'd really love to take a look at these guys. I mean, running backs, especially these guys, I had to dig into the list to find them even. They're low on the list of free agent running backs. And those guys don't get signed very quickly, so I think there's an opportunity there.
I actually like those two names. Kareem Hunt especially. That's an intriguing one. I'm going to throw one at you guys, and I know I'm probably going to get some pushback on this one. I like A.J. Dillon out of Green Bay. Now, I know he was injured this year.
Not a bad pick.
He's on my list, yeah.
Yeah, I know he was injured this year, but you want to talk about a big-bodied guy who can get you that yard. A.J. Dillon's your guy. If he comes back and he passes physicals and all that stuff, I think A.J. Dillon's the kind of guy. He's the kind of running back the Dolphins need. He's kind of the guy I had earmarked for, for good things for the Dolphins offense. He can kind of be the thunder to Devon Achane's lightning.
I don't hate it at all. I will say this though, from a cap standpoint, keeping Mostert would be very expensive, right? Because cutting Mostert would, I think, free up close to $3 or $4 million, if I'm not mistaken.
I think they would cut him and re-sign him like they always do.
If Mostert's back, they're going to cut him and re-sign him, I believe.
So I did put Dillon on my list too. My biggest my biggest like pause on that is it reminds me of this line from draft day where they're talking about players that the coach is mad because he traded away all the first round picks. So he's talking about trading for these players from the Bills, right? And the coach goes, he looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane. And that's AJ Dillon, boys. Like, he's got the biggest legs we've ever seen, but I don't think he knows how to use them. And I have him on the list because he's a big body. He can hit the hole, but man, I don't know if he's actually good.
I mean, how about somebody like Javonte Williams, right? Assuming the
That's an
Broncos
interesting name.
don't re-sign him, right? I mean, he's on the younger side.
Mhm.
He's been productive. I mean, yeah, he's battled injuries. He battles injuries all the time. So that's a perfect Chris Greer signing, right?
Well, free agency, you're looking for players that are kind of like that.
Yeah.
And for one, Anthony, I'm very glad you didn't say that nobody came to AJ Dillon's birthday party. But
That's the stupidest line in the movie. Come on.
the running backs, like if you're getting a free agent, you want somebody who is either, on that younger side who's been battling injuries. That you pretty much want people who you could sign cheap. Because as much as we talked about Aaron Jones, or Dolphin fans have talked about Aaron Jones in the past, like getting him at this point, that's not necessarily feasible considering the rest of the holes we have on this roster.
What about you, Keith? What do you think? You got anybody else, man?
Well, I like Javonte Williams. I just think the Dolphins have so many needs, so many holes on this roster that they can't really afford to break the bank on a running back. So they're either gonna draft somebody. I don't see us bringing Raheem Mostert back. Unfortunately, thank you for your service, Raheem. Loved having you.
Yeah.
Loved having you, but it's time to move on. We got to shop in the bargain bin for running back.
So I did have a bargain bin name. And I like this guy because he took over in the Browns a few years ago and then essentially disappeared off the face of the earth. Dearness Johnson over in Jacksonville is a free agent.
Okay.
And he ran real well filling in Cleveland that 1 year.
Yeah.
And I thought for sure, like the performance he put on that season, he would land a starting gig somewhere. And he hasn't. He's been relegated to a backup behind Travis Etienne over in Jacksonville for a few years now. But, I mean, you can't get more bargain bin than that.
Yeah, it's true. And that's where we're at in the running back room, I think. We're talking about splurging a little bit on a backup quarterback.
I don't think it's a little, Keith. I mean, I think we're going to be one of the higher paid backup quarterback teams in the league.
As well we should be. As well we should be. We have a oft-injured starting quarterback. So this is something we need to do. We saw what going to the bargain bin for backup quarterback did for us this year. And the answer is not much.
Maybe we can get Russ to agree to a $1 million 1 year deal like you do at Pittsburgh again.
I mean, he's going to be getting paid by the Broncos from now until the end of time. So yeah, maybe. Jerome
really like that.
Name. Not a
That's
bad
a
name.
really good name. He's not on my list. I must have missed him as a free agent. That's a really good name.
But there are a lot of free agent running backs, and a lot of them are going to get signed, whether it be during the initial run of free agency or after the draft. The Dolphins are going to probably bring somebody in, but they're not going to pay him a lot, and he's going to be one of those guys that we bring in and hope he kind of gives us the production that maybe not Raheem Mostert gave us 2 years ago, but maybe the kind of production that Jeff Wilson gave us a couple of years ago, where he comes in for a few snaps and he already looks like he's warm and he's running hard. And that's the kind of guy like a Jerome Ford that, the Dolphins are going to be looking for. But let's move on here to one of the more intriguing units for the Dolphins. I'm intentionally saving offensive line for last, by the way, because that's going to be a long conversation.
Oh, here's where fun begins. Like the next three
let me
position groups are by far the most fun.
Yes, and we're going to go to wide receiver right now. Now, Dolphins re-signed Jalen Waddle. They drafted Malik Washington in the 6th round last year. Those two guys, I think, are presumably keepers for the Dolphins. Outside of those two guys, it gets a little cloudy. It gets a little murky, even with Tyreek Hill. So I'm going to start with you actually here, Anthony. How do you see this shaking out?
Well, we got to do something because we're losing half of our receiver room. I mean, we have Craycraft and Barrios, who have been with us for the past 2 years, are both free agents yet again. We brought in some guys this year to kind of fill holes. Eskridge, Dubose, and Schwartz. Dubose and Schwartz, unfortunately, didn't play very much. We saw Eskridge quite a bit at the end of the season, though.
Great
and then, like
special
you,
teamer.
yeah, his special teamer, yeah, and we just signed Tariq Black, who was on our practice squad, to a futures contract. So we have at least the rights to Tariq Black. I don't even know who that is, but I just figured I'd mention it.
No idea.
Nope, never heard of him.
So outside of that, we obviously have Tyreek and we have Jalen, who are our two superstars. We got Malik Washington, who came in hot last year, 6th-round pick. That's fantastic.
Don't forget Taj.
We got Taj Washington, who was a 7th-round pick. Unfortunately, got injured in the preseason last year,
Yeah.
so we didn't get to see him. And then we have a 4th-round pick by the name of Eric Ezukanma, who is somehow still on this team, even though he has done next to nothing for us. Other than
I had
his
such
rookie
high hopes
season,
for that guy too.
listen, his rookie season, he put up one of the best preseason performances we've seen out of a Dolphins wide receiver.
Yeah.
He just disappeared. So undoubtedly, I know this conversation is going to go towards the trading of Tyreek Hill. I just know you guys. I know the conversations we've had in the background. So I am going to let you all do that because I looked up some names that I think would be nice fillers in the event that did in fact happen, or even if it didn't. I got to say that over in Washington, they took everybody's trash and turned it into treasure this year.
Mhm.
If you look at this roster, it is guys almost exclusively that no other team wanted. And the guy that stood out to me a ton, and it stood out to me when he was in Atlanta as well, and it always confused me how he didn't get more of a chance, was Alameda Zacchaeus. Not only does he have an extremely fun and difficult name to say, but he played decently well too. So his name stood out to me as a guy, and I'm just going to go through some free agents. We draft a wide receiver every single year, so I know we're going to draft one. I don't know what round we're going to draft one. It really depends on if we trade Tyreek or not. I think if we trade Tyreek, we take one a little earlier, maybe 2nd round. If we don't, we're looking at another later round. Maybe we have 2 3rd-round picks, I think, so maybe we use the 2nd, 3rd-round pick on that. But the other guys just in the free agency landscape that stood out to me that are not named T. Higgins, because again, I know that others are going to talk plenty about T. DeMarcus Robinson.
Who could that be?
This I never know which way you are. This guy.
He's somewhere.
So listen,
He's
DeMarcus
wonderful.
Robinson with the LA Rams. He's put up some good tape there. I think he can be just a fine wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. And that's important to point out, is that's what I'm looking at these guys as, is wide receiver 3s, wide receivers 4s. Because I think if you trade a guy like Tyreek Hill, I would hope you get something in return, or you have a game plan on how to get another wide receiver 1/2 in there. I know that Jalen Waddle was the 6th overall pick in the draft, and he should be able to take over wide receiver 1 duties, but he hasn't exactly been that 6th overall pick in the draft that you expect him to be. So that's the one pause I put on the Hill trade, is I don't want to go back to having no passing game. That's really where I'm sticking. So I looked at DeMarcus, I looked at Zacchaeus, Darius Slayton, who seemingly is like a forever New York Giant, and you can't escape them. I'd love to, I thought he played really well for a few seasons. And then how about our boy Mac Hollins? Let's bring Hollins back. I always love this guy. I don't know why everybody
But he
hates him.
doesn't wear shoes, guys.
Who cares?
That's
wears
perfect
shoes
for
when he's on
South
the field.
Beach.
I threw
Yeah.
Mac Hollins in especially for you guys. I knew you would have a nice reaction to that. So yeah.
I love Matt Collins.
Mhm.
He comes up with clutch cash after clutch cash. You saw it with the Bills this year. I love that name.
In that game against the Chiefs, he was their best receiver.
Yes, he
had,
was.
like, what do you have, like 6 receptions for over 70?
He crushed
Yeah.
it, dude.
Yeah,
Yeah, kind of a weird dude, but look,
Yeah.
when he's on the field, he balls.
kind of exactly
Um,
what we were missing this year. Fast and tall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another good thing about Matt Collins is even if he's not on the offense, even if he's not playing offense, he plays a good special teams.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So he's a very versatile guy. Drafted by the Eagles,
Yeah.
actually.
To Josh's point, that's what I was aiming for, tall guys who were physical.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And the only guy I think I named who isn't is Darius Slayton. But Robinson, Hollins, Zacchaeus, those are all tall physical players that I think
Yeah.
would be a nice change of pace from our normal
Mhm.
guys are. Slayton is my guy if our team is just dedicated to sticking with the same size profile at receiver,
God,
then I
hope
can
not.
see a Slayton coming in.
And that's another thing. I think, we talked about this with the backup quarterback position. I think this is Chris Greer, Mike McDaniel's off season to kind of right the wrongs and, maybe correct some of the mistakes they've made in the past. So when we say the Dolphins don't really have a big physical wide receiver who can go up and get a 50-50 ball for you, this is kind of what we're looking for this all season. So I think
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to throw this to you, Josh.
This is true as well, but I didn't think it would be a realistic ad, to
No,
be
yeah,
honest. Yeah.
All right, so fellas, buckle up, right?
All right.
All right, so I am a huge Tyreek fan, but I think it's time to let go. I've been a very big advocate for trading Tyreek Hill this offseason, right? He clearly, I don't respect the player that checks out at halftime and refuses to go in. Sorry, once you do that, you're done, in my opinion. Like, there's no coming back from that. I understand we were out of the playoffs. I understand we were losing. I understand all of it, and you don't want to risk your body. But at the end of the day, you are a competitor. You are on the field. You do your 111, right? And Tyreek Hill did not do his 111. Not to mention, he's one of, if not the highest paid player on our team. So, sorry, fellas. So I think, there's a lot to be said there for, is he the right fit? Is he good for the locker room? What can we get for him, right? Players, as they hit a certain age, as they hit a certain wear and tear on their bodies, they are a depreciating value from a business standpoint. And I think we will not get a return anywhere close to what we dished out for him. I think, and we've said it on the show, what he gave us in the time he's been with us, phenomenal. Worth every single cent. Every single pick, every single cent. 2 back-to-back 1,700 yards receiving years, and a shit show that was last year, right? With all kinds of things that went wrong. Now, if we trade him, and depending on how it goes and what time of the year and all that other stuff, we will get a substantial amount of money back, right? The few names outside of the draft, and I think that's where we probably go, right? To fill this need in particular. But one name that I keep going back to, yes, Chris Godwin was on my list. You have T. Higgins, who is like my dream candidate. I think he's a perfect fit for this roster. He's tall, he's fast. I'm not saying we can, but if we could do maybe a swap 1-for-1, give him the same money, I'd be fine with it, right? That money's already accounted for. See ya, right? But that's a pipe dream. That's not going to happen. One name that I went back to over and over and over again was Joshua Palmer from the Chargers.
Ooh.
Okay.
Right? Big, fast, clean route runner. Nothing spectacular, but just a Swiss Army knife, good across the board. Again, has some injury history.
Josh is dying. This will just be a moment.
I'm just dying a little bit. I apologize, guys. But Josh Palmer was Elijah Moore, Chris Godwin, were the names that I kept going. So maybe Amari Cooper, if the Bills let him go, or don't re-sign him, maybe bring him in on a 1 or 2 year deal. Play in South Beach, save some money on taxes. Come enjoy South Beach as your career.
Runs great routes.
Exactly. And I think the biggest thing when looking at this team at this position on this team is the redundancy. And I can't stand redundancy. I understand, a team has an identity, but when you have a $70 million wide receiver as your wide receiver 1, who's 5'2", and you have
5'2".
and Tyreek Hill, and who's very good. It's not a slight on him.
What does Kyler Murray have to do with this, John?
and you just paid Waddle, tens of millions of dollars. I think he's averaging, was it 15, 17 million a year, maybe a little more. I can't remember. Probably closer to 20. Who's also 5'2". I mean, there's redundancies, and that's not a slight on the player. That's not a slight on their talent. I think they're both wide receiver 1 quality players. My thing is what happens when the team learns how to defend that, which we saw this year. We have no one, not even our tight end, who I'm a huge fan of, is tall. Nobody's tall. Nobody can go up and get that one-handed, two-handed, 50-50 ball in the back of the end zone while keeping your feet down because you have mass, right? So even if the defense, even if the safeties or the cornerbacks put their hands on you, you have enough mass to run through it, to run through that block, to run through the contact. We don't have that. So Joshua Palmer, Amari Cooper, should the Bills not bring him back? I think they should bring him back. If I was the Bills, I would want him back. And there's a ton of people in the draft who I'm a big fan of, and we'll get to those later.
All right. I like those names. I'm going to toss out this name that Brian gave us, Keenan Allen. I like that name a lot too.
Mm-hmm. I think he goes back, though. I think he goes back.
Yeah, I think he probably does too. But talking about a guy who runs great routes, he's a bigger guy. not always the healthiest, but still,
Perfect Chris Greer guy.
yeah, but still a guy worth kicking the tires on if he becomes available.
There's a lot of big names available this offseason.
Yeah.
I know I
There
put
are.
out a bunch of small name guys, but there was a lot of big names on the list.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't even mention DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah.
I mean,
talk about a
Deontay
guy who
Johnson,
win 50-50 balls.
Stephon Diggs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a ton of them, man.
Deontay Johnson's career is over, I would bet.
I know.
Yeah, I don't want Deontay Johnson in this locker room.
Not
Taylor,
enough, man.
Taylor, what are your all right, so first and foremost, are you a fan of trading Tyreek Hill? And if you are, what are your options to replace him?
I know I gave the offensive season jockstrap, but still I'm kind of 50-50 on it. I
Okay.
know he came out and explained his, let's just call it an outburst at the end of the season with his I'm out stuff. And it seems like he is at least verbally committed to wanting this team to change its identity. And there is something of value in that, and there is something of value in Tyreek Hill being a member of this team. Josh, you mentioned the redundancy, and there's a bit of identity in what they do, both Waddle and Hill, as being those Ferraris on the outside. But I'm kind of with you. I think we're at that point to where the offense does need to change. And honestly, we just need to get rid of the money that's being spent in this position room.
Mm-hmm.
Especially to just one player. So I would be up for trading Tyreek Hill, getting what we can for him. And really what I would do then is draft somebody. This is going to sound wild, especially. I understand. We will get to the offensive line. We need to mess with
I
this
hope you're going to
offensive
say
line.
who I think you're about to say.
But we need to spend premium draft capital on the
Mhm.
wide receiver position if we trade Tyreek.
Say his name, Taylor.
I'm not going to say his name.
Come on.
Because
You can't give the
honestly,
people
I
a
don't think-
cliffhanger.
I don't think it's who Josh thinks it is. It's not
Oh.
McMillan.
Nope. Okay.
For me, it would be, and I understand this is a little redundancy. Luther Burden is a name
Oh,
that I'm thinking
That's a
of.
great player. Mhm.
He is somebody who uses motion a lot. He is both in more of a slot this year, but he's been on the outside before. I love the way that while he is small, there is something about him that's very CeeDee Lamb-like to me, and CeeDee Lamb also comes across as this Deebo Samuel kind of player. So it's in that same realm as, we could plug him anywhere kind of thing. And he plays with some physicality to him. So Luther Burden is the name that I would really like us to look at. But when it comes to just aside from the Tyreek of it all, aside from if we keep him, if we trade him, all that stuff, no matter what, we need to get depth.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys have brought up a lot of great names. Some of the comments have brought up a lot of great names. The big problem I have with some of the more well-known names, let's just say that, is we don't have the money for that. And if we're trying to change the way this roster is constructed, then we shouldn't be spending that money in the same position room as we just paid Waddle. So I'm bringing up names kind of like a Demarcus Robinson from the Rams.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Okay.
somebody who was pretty reliable for the Rams this past year. And Josh Palmer, who said Josh Palmer? Was it you, Josh? Yes. That was another name that I was thinking of as well. I think that was a really good shout.
Mm-hmm.
And also, talked about the Commanders earlier. How about Jamison Crowder? Talk about a very cheap name.
He's been
Yeah.
invisible for so many years. When his name pops up, I get surprised. I'm like, oh,
Yeah, he's been in the league so long. I saw him play last week for the Commanders. I was like, whoa, he's still on the team. Also, you had the Mac Hollins. You got the Trent Sherfields. If you want to bring them back, there is some familiarity there, at least organizationally. So, no matter what, you have to change the way this depth is on the roster at this position. Because I love Malik Washington. I just don't want to go into the season next year where we're putting all our eggs in the basket of Malik Washington as wide receiver 2, and then we look at the same basically room that we had last year at wide receiver, and we're sitting there going, well, I hope Malik Washington outperforms where we drafted him this year again, or we're going to be really looking bad.
And the problem with that is again, even if you trade Tyreek and you go in, again, it's small guy in Waddle, small guy in Washington, small guy in Taj. and they're all decent players, right? But I do want to say this, and I know we haven't. We did a show on it before, and we probably cover it at some point in the offseason, maybe post draft. But this team has a bunch of levers that we can pull, a bunch of options that we can make to open up a crap load of cap space without sacrificing the future. I mean, yeah, you're pushing some money down the hill, but it's not as much as people think. I mean, you look at our cap situation now, you're like, dude, are we going to be able to sign anyone? Because we're over the cap. We have no money. There are post June 1st cuts. There are trades. There are levers you can pull in certain contracts. Now, with those levers comes a commitment to said player, like a Bradley Chubb, like a Zach Sealer, who we can re-sign and maybe lower the cap and give him a signing bonus and push that money down because we need to re-sign him. He's one of my big, we'll get to that on the defensive side, but there's a lot of players that we can re-up, renegotiate, pull levers. The Tua contract, we could free up, I think it was like $30 to $40 million without truly affecting, without blowing everything out of the water in 2 years, where it's like the New Orleans Saints. I mean, again, that means we're committing to Tua, and there are some people that probably love that. Me. There are some people that probably hate it. Most other Dolphins fans. So, there are options that we can do to open up cap space where we can then maybe go after those tier 2 type players instead of having to settle for the tier 3s and 4s.
I think we're kind of treating.
I was just going to say the worry I have about that is what you brought up about the Saints. That's what I don't want the Dolphins to become, and we are getting very close. We're arguably there, but we're getting very close to being in that realm.
Oh, we're not even close to the Saints.
Taylor. What realm? The Saints? You're. I don't mean to disagree with you, but that's crazy talk.
The Saints are $88 million over the cap right now.
Yeah. We're nowhere near that, man.
Yeah.
But when it comes to, I just don't want to be in that spot to where, we're just going to kick that can down the road again. Let's invest in the same positions that we are not really winning with, hoping it will work this time.
Yes, I agree with what you're saying there, Taylor. I think, and if the Dolphins do move on from Tyreek Hill, I think the wide receiver room as a whole is going to take up less of the cap space just because. And that means T. Higgins is probably out. That means a guy like Chris Godwin. Godwin, yeah.
Marquise Brown, those kind of players are done.
But let me toss a couple of names out here to you guys. One is a free agent, and I think we can kind of get him on a 1-year prove-it deal because he is often injured, but his skill set does match what the Dolphins need on their offense right now, and that name is Mike Williams.
That's a good name.
Oft injured, but he had some good years with the Chargers, some good moments with the Chargers. Not so much with the Jets this year, not so much with the Steelers this year. But he's a guy that I think can wing you those 50-50 balls. And I don't think he comes in and immediately becomes your wide receiver too. I think he comes in and earns playing time, earns more opportunities on this roster. And I think that kind of works in his favor because we don't want him on the field an awful lot anyway because of how often he gets injured. Another name, and this is kind of one of my man crushes as far in the draft, is Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State. He's been tearing up Senior Bowl practices this week.
Has been. Yeah.
And
stud.
A big bodied guy who knows how to exploit zones. Very savvy. Great hands, 6'3", 225 pounds.
Runs like a 4.42 or something like that. Yeah. It's wild.
I think we can get a guy like that in the second round, potentially, maybe even the third. I don't know, but if we trade what's that?
Oh, I was just saying I don't hate that at all.
Now if we trade Tyreek Hill and get a little more draft capital, maybe we can trade up for a guy like Jaden Higgins.
How about we just cut the noise, trade up in the first round, and take Toria McMillan?
Yeah.
Just pull a Ditka and trade the whole draft up.
Just everyone.
Yeah. We're done. Let's play some golf. Let's get that.
F picks. Now, I do want to say one more thing, if I can, before we get off of the wide receivers.
Yes.
I do think I would like to see River Craycraft come back.
I would too.
Obviously, depending on the value, right? It needs to make sense because he's never on the field. But his chemistry with Tua is something that I just don't think you can let walk out the door unless he prices himself out of what we feel comfortable paying with. And
Yeah.
another thing is, remember, every single time we're doing roster analysis, that how they build contracts is they build it so that we can pull levers down the road to free up money to make moves without sacrificing the future. So as fans, now I'm not some math guy, I'm not some contract guru. I just know what I listen to and know what the research I do and what I read. How we built out the contracts, like Waddles, like Sealers, like Tuas, like Hills, is that there are like, on the defensive side, what's his face? Chubbs. We can pull levers, we can move on and not sacrifice the future. Unlike the Saints, where if they cut a player, now they have $60 million for that one player because they kicked it all down to the final year of the contract. So we're in better shape than it seems like we're in. I'll just say that.
Yeah. And I agree with you there, but I still think we need to be smart about who we give money to this offseason.
Of course, 100%.
No Teron Armstead contracts. No gigantic, make this guy the top paid player at his position type of contracts.
Mm-hmm.
We got to be a little smarter than that this offseason. We don't have stupid money to spend. I'm gonna, before we get off wide receivers, I want to ask you guys one more question. Should we trade Tyreek Hill? What can we get for Tyreek Hill?
Oh, Jesus.
That's one thing I've been kind of grappling with since the offseason began, because I know that's certainly on the table. I know that, Brian Wilson in the chat, he wants the Dolphins to trade Tyreek Hill to
I'll trade him to New England for their first round pick this year and Joe Milton.
Done and done.
But
I know Brian wants the Dolphins to trade him to New England. Don't know if that's going to happen, but what do you guys realistically see the Dolphins getting for Tyreek Hill? I honestly don't know. So Anthony, enlighten me here.
Yeah, I realistically think it's a high second if you're gonna move him. I do think that you want to target teams with young quarterbacks who don't yet have that alpha receiver. We don't want to trade him to New England, but New England's a good example of a team like that. But yeah, he's in his 30s, and that's I know wide receivers don't hit that cliff like most positions hit that cliff in their 30s, but that your trade value is a little diminished at that point. So I would be happy if I would want 2 picks in the first 3 rounds, at least. So if we could get 2 seconds or a second and a third, or maybe it's a second and 2/3 or second, third, fourth, something like that. Like, I would definitely not be happy if we didn't at least get a second in that move. If they end up trading them for 2/3, I don't think that's worth it.
Okay. You're more optimistic than I was. I was thinking like a third and a
fifth.
Fourth. Yeah, third and a fourth or something like that.
He's
I don't
still
know.
good.
I honestly don't know.
None of us know. That's why you asked what I would want. I don't know what we could get. What I would want is at least a second. Yeah.
Well, Taylor, what do you think we could get, man?
I'm with Anthony. What I would want is a second. I think that's fair considering his age, considering the contract. The team that I keep thinking about every time we get into this Tyreek Hill trade, Raiders.
Yeah.
I kept thinking that too, man, but they don't have a quarterback. So I'm like, unless they draft Shador or something, then maybe.
You actually want to turn Tyreek Hill loose in Las Vegas, man?
Please. Yeah. What could go wrong?
He's not on the Dolphins.
True.
He's a grown man. He can do what he wants.
Josh, what do you think? What can we realistically get for him?
I think when looking at trades, you got to understand that whatever team we're trading him to, the reason we're not going to get comparable value to what we traded is because they're going to have to give him a new contract, right? Yeah. And so that diminishes what our return could be. I think Anthony, Taylor, you guys hit it right out of the park. I think, a 2 would be amazing. Maybe a 2 this year, a 2 next year, or a 2 and a 3 this year and something next year and some pick swaps, or a 2 this year, a 3 next year and a player that we like. I mean, that's the realm that we're going to be living in.
Okay.
But with that comes the cap relief as well. So where the value that we'll be receiving is a little on the meh side, or like, okay, well, we gave up a 1, a 2, or 1, 2 2s, a 3, a 7, a 5, a 9, a 14, a car, so a bag of jujubes and a Porsche to get them, right? we're only getting a bag of popcorn and some Twizzlers, which is fine, but we're also getting the distraction out of the building. We're allowing Waddle to come into the position that I think he deserves to be in, and we're getting the cap relief on the end.
We better walk away from this trade with a bag of jujubes. That's all I have to say about that.
You know who I would look at actually? And I just had to look up who the young quarterbacks in the league are because my brain is on Dolphins right now.
Washington.
No, because I think Terry McLaurin's really good. I think Indianapolis. I think Michael Pittman's really good, but they have nobody on the side of him. These guys are on the hot seat, like as hot as it can possibly get. That GM has like 6 games to prove he can still do it before he gets the can. Like,
sounds familiar.
I mean, talk about somebody who's desperate. They desperately want to get their their young quarterback some weapons. They desperately want to win some games. They desperately need a wide receiver. I mean, Indianapolis isn't a bad target to try to move him to. If you would agree to that.
I mean, I know it's just stupid, but what about Kansas City? Send them back home, right? Yeah. I mean, again,
we can't be helping Kansas City. I know
that's such a Kansas City move, though, to trade a second back to the team that gave you 2 or 3 firsts for the guy. Like,
I'm just saying. I don't love it, but I mean, the NFL wants them to win anyway, so might as well, pay the popper.
That's what they do. Teams like that.
The brakes on that narrative.
That's exactly what they do.
All right, let's move on from wide receiver here, guys. That we're going to be talking about Tyreek Hill and trades and wide receivers a lot in the upcoming weeks. That's a position group that I think is going to be in flux all off season. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be plenty more conversations about wide receiver, and there's going to be plenty of conversations about this upcoming position group. Like I said, I'm saving offensive line for last. So we're moving on to tight end here. Jonnu Smith, obviously the only Pro Bowler on the Dolphins, had a record-breaking season as far as franchise records go. He's going to be back. We want him back. We love ourselves some Jonnu Smith. Outside of Jonnu Smith, we had Durham Smythe. We had Julian Hill, a couple of guys that I know none of us really want back. And I don't think I'm stepping out on a limb by saying that. So, what does our tight end room look like next year outside of Jonnu Smith? Because I don't think either of those guys are going to be back, Julian Hill and Durham Smythe. What does it look like? Taylor, I'll start with you on this one. What do you think, man?
Well, I think I speak for the entire panel when I say we need to revamp it. Almost entirely, except for Jonnu. And I would say look into off the I didn't know I had this in my notes here. Look into off the books government projects so we can find a way to clone Jonnu Smith. And the closest thing I have to that, and I know I mentioned Luther Burden in the last segment, but where I am currently at with the Dolphins and the drafting, I know we're very early. I'm more open to drafting a guy in 2 to 3 for wide receiver. Mm-hmm. Want to get Tyler Warren. That is just my guy.
Yeah, but he might be a first round. He's like a top 15 first round pick potentially.
I know
we're sitting at 13, and it's going to be rough to get him at 13. But right now, he's like the name that you're like, who to get to pair along with Jonnu. I can't stop thinking about
Could you imagine? Could you the 2 tight end sets with him and Jonnu? Oh my goodness!
True Fin fan would have to put out an APB for him to find him. He's probably on the freaking Empire State Building naked, shaking his Dolphins jersey around.
Hey, what is he shaking? This is a family friendly show.
Jersey. I said it.
And for tight end 3 and 4, there's something about the developmental guys that we've been working with. Tanner Connors, Hayden Rucci's. A big fan of Hayden Rucci, by the way. Hopefully he continues to develop. But the big thing for me, past getting somebody who was like a Jonnu Smith, would be getting blocking tight ends in that more backup role.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to start off by saying, Taylor, I too love Warren out of Penn State.
Oh.
Love him.
Man-Crush Central.
Yeah, absolutely.
If we take a tight end in the first round,
I know
I'm not coming to that show.
that's what I'm saying.
Well, it's going to be a live show, so it's going to be real interesting.
Last thing,
that's what I'm saying.
Warren is somebody who he plays with physicality as well. So there's something about like what we need as an offense and what we've been talking about, setting the table for weeks, saying this team has to get more physical. And I understand, again, offensive line is coming, I promise. But there's something to be said about getting somebody like a Tyler Warren in there who will help set the tone in the receiving game and the blocking game.
I wouldn't be upset. I don't know, man.
I would
Uh,
if you need some support.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't-
look, guys.
I don't
mean,
know, man.
what if we were to take someone like Loveland? I mean, I know he's more of a receiving threat, but in the second or third round, right?
Yeah.
Instead of blowing our tight end,
That 13 spot needs to be a guard. I don't want to hear anything out of these
that
coaches.
that 13 spot needs to be one specific player.
Yeah.
There is not we don't need to be vague about it. That should be one specific player, and it's somebody
If
out
he's
of
there.
Texas
If
named
he's
Kevin
there.
Banks Jr., and he should be there.
I hope he is. I hope he is, and I'm right there with you. And
Or-
Taylor, I'm not knocking your take here because I love Tyler Warren just as much as the next guy.
No, it's
Washington-
fair.
Watching him play in the playoffs this year for Penn State, that guy does it all. He's a notch below Brock Bowers in my book, and Brock Bowers is spectacular.
I mean, I will say this though, guys. Keep an eye on LSU tight end Mason Taylor. I have him at number 79 in my top 100.
Mhm.
Well-rounded tight end, plays in the short, intermediate, deep positions of the field, can block. Tight end 5 for me, right? 6'5", 255. I think that would be a really good steal in like third or fourth round kind of thing, maybe fourth round, fifth round.
Okay. All right. Well, Josh, what does the tight end look? I'm going to bring it to you then. What does the tight end room look for you next year?
I'm gonna keep this short and sweet because we're pushing the 120 mark, and I
Yeah.
want to get the takes of the deep end, and I also want to talk about some offensive line for about 30 or 40 minutes. So, I think the first thing we do, the most important thing in that entire position room, is we need to re-sign Jonnu because he's got 1 year left. I believe we only signed him for a 2-year. We need to re-up that man. He's done everything right. This is the kind of thing, along with, and I'll talk about it on our when we hit the defense, along with Sealer, for example. They took team-friendly deals. They showed out. Sign them now before they turn into the Chris Wilkin type. Not saying that a tight end would make $100 million, but you get my gist, right? That's the only thing I really care about. Everything else is gravy. Let's re-sign Jonnu. Let's give him. Let's keep him here for 3 or 4 more years, and then everything else will fall into place.
Yeah.
And I apologize to the fans for watching me cough every 14 seconds.
You should apologize.
Yeah, the Dolphins certainly need to re-sign Jonnu Smith, and in doing so, I don't know if they go after a tight end early in this draft.
I don't think they have to. They don't really have to. It would be amazing.
Tyler Warren, man.
Right. But I think somebody, and I didn't get into the free agency, but like Tyler Conklin, Tommy Tremble, Mo Alley Cox, like bring somebody in just to fill in the back of the roster, like just in case. But I don't want to see any other name that was in this tight end room other than Jonnu Smith next season.
Yeah.
Everyone else go away.
Anthony, what do you think about tight end, man?
Yeah, only one of them is actually a free agent, so in all likelihood we'll have to cut the other guys if they're not happy with their performance this year. Which, if they asked us, they would all be cut already. One thing I did, notice, and I'll get to my free agent additions in a second. Tyler Warren, I actually know his name, so that's a good thing. I watched him play in the playoffs. I don't know many players yet, but Tyler Warren I do know. We have signed, and this person has made the roster, an undrafted free agent each of the last 3 years. 2022, it was Tanner Connor. In 2023, it was Julian Hill. And this past year, 2024, it was Hayden Rucci. So I would expect to see another undrafted tight end make the roster this year. It just seems to be what we do here. I did want to mention, though, that it does seem like we use the tight end for our physicality, to Taylor's point. All of our receivers are 5'10" and 100 pounds soaking wet. All of our tight ends are 6'3", 6'4", and 6'5". Well, Durham Smith is 6'6". You go, boy. He plays like he's 5'10", though. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to revamp this tight end room. 2 names I really like, guys. I really like them. Juwan Johnson in New Orleans. they don't have the cap room to sign anybody, so he ain't re-signing there. Bring him on down, baby. Let's go. Let's get another guy that nobody wants, thinks he's dead, doesn't have any talent left, and watch him thrive in this offense. And then my second name is up in Cleveland again, Harrison Bryant. Always been a big fan of his. Huge physical player. If we got either one of them, I'd be super pumped. Otherwise, I think we're looking at late round draft picks. And we don't have that many draft picks, so if we don't get any there, we're looking at undrafted free agents again.
How about a name like Juwan Johnson? What do you guys think about that name?
That's who I was just touting.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, Juwan Johnson. Yeah, Juwan Johnson's a name that I've been looking at. I do think they're going to probably draft a guy in the later rounds, a tight end. I remember 2 years ago, I wanted them to draft Washington.
Darnell.
Yeah, Darnell Washington.
What is he, like 6'8"? I wanted him so bad.
Huge.
Dude.
He's massive.
Pittsburgh? Is he on Pittsburgh now? Is that who drafted him?
Yeah, he's on Pittsburgh, and he's made a few plays for him. He's a good blocker.
And we passed on him twice. Oh, it was infuriating.
Yeah. So, do we move on to offensive line, or do we go?
Chat's point, we could bring back Gesicki.
yeah. No, I don't see that one.
Talk about physicality, right?
Yeah.
I'd be up on that Empire State Building wiggling something else if we brought him back.
Guys like Gesicki, guys like Zach Ertz, they don't block, and I think if the Dolphins have shown us anything, we need a tight end who can be a complete tight end.
Yeah, very similar to the same discussion we had about the wide receiver room and the running wide receiver room as far as redundancy, where we want to break that mold. We need to do the same across the board, really, in the tight end room too.
So I'm going to throw it to you guys. Do we do offensive line, or do we do takes from the deep end? Because we are getting up to the hour and a half mark here.
Well, I mean,
we got to finish it.
We got to finish it.
All right. Then offensive line it is. We'll probably try to do takes in the deep end next week because we are getting up there in time. So, offensive line.
I probably have the least to say if you want to start down here.
I mean, there's a lot to say about the offensive line, I think. And I think first and foremost, Aaron Brewer came in and kind of solidified the center spot, and he's kind of perfect for what we do as far as the zone blocking goes. Aaron Brewer was a nice addition for the Dolphins.
Top 5 center in the league.
Yeah. Austin Jackson played a great right tackle for us until he got hurt. That's kind of been his MO throughout this point of his career. Like he's only had one fully healthy season since he's been here. But when he's in there, he's a pretty good right tackle for us. And then Teron Armstead played left tackle for us this year. Don't know if he's going to be back, but we have a replacement for him and Patrick Paul. So those three positions, I think, are somewhat solidified. What isn't solidified is our guards, obviously. So, if you disagree with anything I just said, please let me know. But Anthony, I'm going to throw it to you first. Mm-hmm. What do you think our offensive line looks like next year? Because we do need an overhaul, especially at guard.
Well, right now it's empty because we're losing 9 of our 16 offensive linemen. So we have 2, 4, 6, 7. Do us a quick math. We have 7 guys left to play 5 positions, and some of them aren't very good. Not that that would make a difference because we don't have a very good unit. Listen, I think that I've mentioned this in a previous show. I think Patrick Paul, Austin Jackson, and Aaron Brewer are a really solid core to this offensive line. If Teron Armstead comes back, yes, that's awesome. If he doesn't, okay, we drafted his replacement in Patrick Paul. But I 100% agree with you, Keith, that the guards are the problem. I think at number 13, we should be looking at offensive line. I don't think that any Dolphins fan would argue with that at this point. And then the problem with free agency is that good offensive linemen don't typically hit free agency because everybody needs offensive linemen. This isn't the college football of old where like there was, offensive line factories like Michigan and crap like that who were just chewing out 5 offensive linemen every draft and they were all all-stars. Like we don't get that anymore from the college football ranks. So I looked at free agency. There's 2 guards that stood out to me in my criteria here because I am not an offensive line guru. I looked at guys who were under 30 and who played over 85% of snaps last year. James Daniels is a guard up in Pittsburgh.
Mhm.
Ben Bredson from Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Those are the two guys that stood out to me. They're both sub 30, both played 86% or more actually of their snaps last year. I say get aggressive. Like, what are we waiting for here? How many seasons do we have to look at these guards just get rolled over by any slightly better than mediocre defensive tackle before we decide that we want to build up the guards? So, in my opinion, if you want to bring back a guy like Jones or Eichenberg as purely depth, okay, because we have to have guys on that unit, right?
Yeah.
We have to. But I really want to see them go after either very highly. If two of our top 3 picks are linemen in this draft, I won't be sad.
I'm right there with you. Absolutely.
And then go get one of these sub 30 guys that are free agents. Let's see if they stick. I mean, we've been doing that, right? I mean, if you look at some of the guys who are free agents, it's because they just got here and they didn't work out. But if I don't see just a commitment to the offensive line this year, I'm really just gonna have a nervous breakdown.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And again, I've said it before a couple of times. I'm going to say it again. I think this is an off season where Chris Greer, Mike McDaniel, they learn from their mistakes and understand what they were doing wrong. Their jobs depend on it, right? So with that being said, they have to address offensive line. They can't give us another line like you guys are more concerned about the offensive line than we are. The offensive line was a cause for concern. The offensive line was not very good. And I've said this before on this show. Guys, 11 of the top 12 offensive lines in the NFL this year were in the playoffs. That's, I mean, if that doesn't,
we know it. We know it.
11 of the top 12 offensive lines in football this year were in the playoffs. The one outlier being the Browns, who had a good offensive line, but everything else is a dumpster fire.
You know what that
in
says
truly
to me,
Browns
though?
fashion.
You know what that says to me though? Those talent evaluators are good at finding guys that fit what they need. Because that's 55 starters right there. There's no way all 55 of those starters are superstars, right? Like,
No,
we need to
not.
find guys that, if we even have a scheme, I have no idea. Our offensive linemen look lost more often than not. But we just need to find the guys that fit.
Yeah. Agreed.
We need those old like 1980s, 90s Pittsburgh Steeler. Bring your lunch pail, put your hard hat on, shut up and do your job. Those kind of players.
Should we start exploring Japan for some sumo wrestlers or something?
I mean,
get some bodies in there.
Hey, get some Maori warriors from.
I can see you just watch The Replacements, Anthony.
Every day.
All right, Taylor, lay it on me, man. How do you see the Dolphins' offensive line shaking out this year?
All right, I feel a little defensive and going into this one, considering I did suggest the Tyler Warren thing a few minutes ago. Keep in mind.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fair, but do keep in mind this fun exercise, and we would love to hear your takes on all this in the comments. But the other thing too is this is assuming, or at least for me, that we're trading Tyreek Hill, and as we were talking about a second, I would assume is what we end up getting, or at least what I would like to get. So there is premium draft capital still there for offensive linemen in a class that I kind of really like for the offensive line. There's a lot of names out there. I don't think, like, my man crush on the offensive line is Tyler Booker. Daniel Jeremiah had him going into the top 15 in his first mock draft, and Daniel Jeremiah seems very plugged in. So that seems like that might not be a thing or might not be possible. But a few names in the free agency department. I know you have some of the old guys. Your Zach Martins, Brandon Sheriffs. But James Daniels is a name I was looking at too, Anthony. I think that's somebody who would fit in this scheme. And also somebody who hasn't really panned out, but Tevin Jenkins.
Yeah.
Coming from Chicago. Coming out of the draft.
I saw him and I skipped right over him.
That's fair.
No, I'm actually with Taylor on that one.
In the pros, he hasn't been great. Like, so I understand.
But in college
he was known.
We can fix him.
Well, in college, he was known as a more physical, I'm going to run you into the sideline kind of guy. So, and if you can't tell, that's kind of been my theme for going through some of these players. Is I just want nasty dudes on this team.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really where I'm coming from. In terms of the draft, I'm sure you guys will name a few and I'll react to it, but I'm not wanting to take up a whole lot of time.
By the way, don't get defensive because in like 2 months we're all going to look like idiots anyways.
Oh,
that's fair. I mean,
Totally.
when we bring back our entire offensive line and say, hey, you guys are worried about it more than we are.
Yeah.
And we lull ourselves into thinking that it's the right thing.
Yeah. And, again, when the Dolphins took Chop Robinson last year, I was not a happy camper.
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm like,
there's,
I didn't even know who he was. He wasn't even on my radar.
I thought they were taking a guard. Taking a guard, and I was super disappointed. And guess what? There's egg on my face. Lots of it.
Stud alert.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll obviously talk about him a little bit next week. But so Taylor, like Tyler Warren, if the Dolphins do draft Tyler Warren and he comes out and balls out the way Brock Bowers did this year, egg on my face. And I'd be happy for that to be the case. Nothing would make me happier than to see the Dolphins hit on another first-round pick that I didn't see coming.
I'll say this, Keith. It'll make me happier if we draft Warren than if the Patriots or the Jets do, which is who he's mocked to the most.
I know.
I would much rather see us draft him than them.
Yeah, I hear you there. All right, so Josh, you've been awful quiet during this offensive line discussion.
Because we want to talk about Kelvin Banks for 45.
Oh my God. Yeah, I just did something that, never mind. So I would say, look, I'm going to keep this super short, right? Because, I think, and I don't know, maybe we do have time to do one round of takes from the deep, maybe. But one name in free agency I'm a big fan of for this team specifically is Patrick McCarry from the Baltimore Ravens, right? Okay. Love him. I think that
versatility,
what he does in that scheme, because they are very run heavy, fits perfectly in our screen game thing that we run.
Why'd you have to bring up the screen, man? We finally got past it. It's the offseason.
I will never get past it. I'm the one shaking in the corner, like, just no. From in the draft though, I have quite a few players that I like in all rounds. I have two names that are going to be early. Both of them will be taken in the first round. I hope we get one of them. And that my choice of choices for the 13th pick, assuming we don't trade up or trade down or anything like that, is Kevin Banks Jr. out of Texas, 6'4", 324 pounds. He played offensive tackle. I think he slots in as a guard. I don't think there's any question he plays in a phone booth, possesses high-level physical tools, a ton of experience, right? And just that nasty road grading. And he's got that like Teron Armstead speed kind of thing where, he's big. He's one of those like, low center of gravity, but can run like the wind, right? It was a, track star when before he hit his growth spurt. The other one is Josh Simmons from Ohio State.
Go.
Yeah. 6'5", 310. I have him I have Josh Simmons right behind as my OT2 in my top 100, right behind Will Campbell out of LSU. But Josh Simmons, I've watched tape of his, and I got to be honest with you, I don't think I've seen an offensive lineman come out in the last 3 or 4 years that I would take over him.
Wow.
You just said Kelvin Banks.
No, but this is the same draft. I'm saying, if one of these two players should be our 13th pick, right? Because both of them are going to be gone in the first half of the first round, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
If we lose out on Kevin Banks Jr., who's for all intents and purposes slotted in the top 10, well, maybe we can make a bong video and he'll fall to us. Like,
let's do it. I'm ready.
I'm all for it. Deep fake it, baby.
Let's go.
But if he's gone,
you can't say it out loud and put it on air, Josh. Like now we're implicated.
We'll just delete the stream.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
It'll be fine.
If we get Kevin Banks Jr., I quit anyways because I want to just go watch him play football. But Josh Simmons is my other guy. And then later in the rounds, he's my OT4 out of Minnesota. I'm going to butcher his first name. Taylor, don't laugh at me. Ariante Ursa. I can't even pronounce his last name. Anyways, offensive tackle. Yeah, out of Minnesota, 6'6", 330, massive, gifted offensive tackle. if Patrick Paul doesn't pan out, he can slide in at the guard position maybe, and we have some bookends there. So there's a couple names to look out for.
I love Kelvin Banks. Love to see him in a Dolphins uniform. And Taylor, you mentioned Tyler Booker earlier. Love Tyler Booker. Love the tape that he puts on.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if he's a scheme fit for the Dolphins. That's my only problem with Tyler Booker, is that he might not be nimble enough to run the zone blocking scheme. He's about 350 pounds. Again, love the player. Love what I saw from him.
Quick question for you guys. If one of those, let's say your favorite offensive lineman is there, but Tyler Warren is also there.
Oh, no. I want Kevin. There is not many players I would take over Kevin Banks.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
There's no player in this draft that would take over Kevin Banks, honestly.
Well, I mean, if Trattoria McMillan fell
fine.
to us,
Fine, yeah.
I'll take a 6'3" or 6'4" wide receiver who runs a 4.2.
Yeah.
DJ thinks Abdul Carter's going first overall, so who are we to say?
Bro, Abdul Carter next to Chop Robinson would be
unreal.
The Penn State boys. Let's go.
Could you
I'll
imagine?
upset these two real quick. I got Josh Simmons ahead of Kelvin Banks, but
No, I mean, look, honestly, that's not
fair.
a bad take. That's not a bad take.
Fair. Yeah.
I did say your favorite offensive lineman. So
Yeah.
I mean, you're wrong, but it's not a bad take.
Well, we're all wrong. It's okay.
I'm going to throw out one name as far as free agents go that I think might be a scheme fit for the Dolphins here. How about Aaron Banks from San Francisco? Now
I don't know much about him.
Now he started off kind of rough. He was a second-round pick for the 49ers in the 2021 draft. Started out kind of rough, but he's gotten progressively better. Only problem is he got injured earlier on in the season and missed the rest of the season. Now, again, we make jokes, classic Chris Greer guy to draft an oft-injured guy. He has been fairly reliable up until this season, and it was, but he did start 13 games for the 49ers. So I like Aaron Banks. I think he's a scheme fit for the Dolphins. My ideal scenario is to see the Dolphins pick up a guy like Aaron Banks or Will Fries from Indianapolis, and then draft a Kelvin Banks or even a Tyler Booker. I wouldn't be upset with Tyler Booker. I just wonder about the scheme fit. And I think bottom line is the Dolphins need to overhaul this guard room and get 2 new starting guards for next season. Bring in Isaiah Wynn as a backup. Bring in maybe Robert Jones. No, not Robert Jones. Maybe Liam Eichenberg as a backup.
He 180 on that so fast.
You knocked that off. I mean, I will say this though. I wouldn't mind bringing back. I mean, we're talking for like the last end of the depth, Liam Eichenberg and Isaiah Wynn, just as like numbers 8 and 9 on the team. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think Ike gets paid if he doesn't come back.
And another guy that should be mentioned here, Kendall Lamb has kind of walked back his take on retirement.
Oh, really?
He's walked back. He's walked that back a little bit. Wouldn't mind seeing him come back as a swing tackle.
Didn't he also say he wasn't coming back to Miami though?
Maybe. But he's another guy that you kind of need on the back end of your offensive line. And as the Dolphins reconstruct this whole thing, we're going to need backup guards, going to need backup tackles. Mm-hmm. Whether Teron Armstead comes back or not, we're going to need a couple more tackles on this team. So look, guys, we're at the 140 mark.
Do you think we got time to do one round?
I think we got time to do one round of Tales from the Deep End. Takes from the Deep End. Now, Josh, you're the one to put these up, so I'm gonna leave it to you to kind of give us questions here.
All right, you got it, guys. Just for those that are new watching this, Takes from the Deep End is where we kind of solicit our fans on all of our social media platforms, or they comment on our shows, and we take their hot takes and we discuss them. Ones that we think are spicy, ones that we think, might spark a good conversation. So we'll get to that in 1 second.
Takes from the Deep End.
All right, fellas. So I know we are crunched for time here, so I will not filibuster too much here, but the first take is going to you, Anthony, okay?
Oh, baby, let's go.
Oh, baby. All right, Takes from the Deep End. The Dolphins are much further away from producing a consistent winning product than most people think. We have an old team that is very top heavy from both a talent and cost standpoint. What are your thoughts?
You can't say that when we just saw the Washington Commanders turning around in one season, guy. I mean, like, it's possible. And we have more talent than them, I would argue, at some positions.
Oh yeah.
Listen, Jaden Daniels is a star over there, so I'm not going to speak too much about them because that's, hard to compare. But do we have a lot of things to fix? Yes. But this is Greer and McDaniel's last shot. I think they know it. Everybody else knows it. They got one more season to turn this bad boy around and get things done. So I think, to Keith's point, they're going to do some soul searching this offseason. They're going to learn some hard lessons, and they're going to do whatever they think it takes to get this team to the playoffs next season. Because if they don't have a job.
I like it. I like it. All right, this one's coming to you, Keith.
Yes, sir.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
If I was Weaver, I'd stay in Miami because he will be our best option as our new head coach. If we part ways with Mike McDaniel next season, he could continue to build off of the respect that he has built in this locker room.
I disagree with that. I'm not typically a fan of firing a coach or not bringing a coach, a la the Dallas Cowboys, firing a coach and then hiring somebody on his staff to be the head coach. If you're going to fire Mike McDaniel, then you purge your coaching staff of Mike McDaniel hires, but by and large, and bring in a new guy. I don't know who that would be next offseason. I think Anthony Weaver should stay because I think Anthony Weaver probably needs a little more seasoning before he becomes an effective head coach in the NFL. That's the argument I would pose for Anthony Weaver to stay. You don't want to leave the nest too early and realize that you can't fly. So I think Weaver is going to be an ideal candidate as a head coach next offseason. Probably will become a head coach next offseason. And guess what? We get a compensatory pick if he does become a head coach next offseason.
Yep. And before I get to you, Taylor, just so for some bookkeeping, I just found out that I thought we had 2 third-round compensatory picks with the Hunt and the Wilkins trade. It's a 3 and a 4 because Wilkins got injured. All right, Taylor, you're up, buddy. Are you ready, sir?
Yep.
This one's spicy. I like this one.
Oh, great.
Takes in the deep end. We clearly lost in big, bold letters the Tunsil trade. Houston completed a full rebuild while we squandered 85% of the picks that we got in that trade. Texans, at this point in time, are currently deep in the playoffs when I pulled this, with a very good young quarterback, and we continue to be stuck in purgatory. For this reason alone, Chris Greer should have been sacked.
Well, I'll be right back, guys. I'm going to go run my head into a wall. I disagree with this one on so many levels. Now, there is a kernel of, I don't want to say truth, but there's a kernel of this I agree with, that we did not make the most out of what we got in that trade. Now, granted, some of that ended up with Tyreek Hill, ended up working out there, but the whole reason this Texans rebuild happened, not to get into Texans forecast here, but because they traded Deshaun Watson to the Browns, and the Browns did a dumber trade than they did. Like it's not like they
might be the worst trade in NFL history.
It's not like the Tunsil trade is the reason why this team is where they are. It's because they made that trade for Deshaun Watson, and they made the right moves. They made the bold decision to not only draft C.J. Stroud, but trade up and get Will Anderson and get an awesome coach in DeMeco Ryans. Like all of that was just a perfect storm of, you nailed it. So I highly disagree with that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your guys' take, fellas. Keith, back to you, buddy.
All right. So it's been a fun show. We're at the hour 45-minute mark right now. We don't normally go this late, but man, we had a lot to say tonight. And there's a lot more to say throughout the offseason. Guys, if you agree or disagree, if there's any names we mentioned or didn't mention, please mention them in the chat, and we will we'll take a look at it. We're going to be here every Wednesday at 7:00. We're doing defense next week, and again, we have a lot of content to go through this all season. And this offensive discussion that we had tonight, guys, this ain't over. We have a lot more to talk about, especially as far as free agents and draft goes. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm going to get your final thoughts. Anthony, I'll start with you. Any final thoughts?
I probably should, but I don't really have much to go off of here. I think it's the off season, and there's a lot of hopium is back
Yeah.
again. Like Taylor mentioned, if we just re-sign the offensive line we had last year, we'll probably come up with reasons why that's a good thing. Because what else are you supposed to say?
They've been in the system. Continuity.
Yeah.
It's listen. I'm excited to see what they do. I truly, truly hope that Greer and McDaniel are men of their word, and they are taking lessons, and they are looking to build this thing the right way. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to see all the teams in the playoffs were built from the inside out, not the outside in. Chris, you listening? Chris? Okay.
Hey,
So
pay attention, Chris.
yeah, Chris, hello? Yeah, okay. But yeah, I'm excited for the offseason. I can't wait, guys. We got, I think one more free agency primer, or maybe two more free agency primers, then we jump into the draft. So I just can't wait. I love this time of year.
Absolutely. Hopium is high, man.
We're the best drug, man.
Josh, any final thoughts?
Yeah, just for the viewers and for those that watch this later, just a quick, like and sub. Really throw your comments, anything that you think about the show on any of the segment videos. We keep an eye on them. We'll pull some hot takes if you got some spicy ones, but just as some future foresight, if you will, or I guess that's a redundant term. Next week, February 5th show, we're doing defensive side, very similar to what we did today. Today we're going through all of the defensive position groups. And then the following two shows are kind of GM role-playing mock draft, where two of us, two hosts, one show, two hosts the other show, build out a mock draft, and then present it as if we're pitching it to the GMs. It's going to be a real fun couple shows. Those are the next that would be the next two shows after that. And then we're getting into our 2025 opponent review show, which I am super, super excited about. So please like and subscribe. Join us on our shows. Cannot wait to do this content with you fellas.
Yes, it's good. It's going to be a lot of fun. And as always, guys, it's so much fun just cutting it up with you guys. Taylor, any final thoughts, man?
Just want to echo everything Josh said. And yet again, if you guys have your takes on who should stay, who should go on the entire offense, leave a comment down below. That's kind of the entire point of this entire episode and our episode next week. To me, I think it's a very fun exercise to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not necessarily whenever the dust has settled what we would do, but it's fun to go through and be like, oh yeah, we should go out and draft this guy in round one or pick up this big freight like T. Higgins. But last thing I'll leave us on, and I feel like it's appropriate, we won't have Skylar Thompson on this team next season, and hopefully we don't have Liam Meichenberg either.
Guys, the offseason. We already won the offseason.
Yeah. So he's going to be somebody else's problem.
I bought a Cooper Rush jersey already. Is that too soon?
No. But watch Skylar Thompson turn into the next Patrick Mahomes.
That's fine. This just can't happen here.
Yeah. Agreed, Taylor. All right, guys. So we're going to call it for the night. It's been another great show. We have another great show ready for you guys next week. Next Wednesday, 7 o'clock. We'll see you. For myself, for Taylor, for Josh, the Aqua Ace, for Anthony. You guys have a lovely night. We'll see you next week.